There are a number of things that I think it's really important people come to understand, and one of those things I want to talk about today, again, I think I've talked about it before, but I want to take the time to talk about it again anyway, and it is the subject of wages and prices, and it's got to do with how those two relate. But that's what we're going to discuss today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Friday the 11th of February of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on Locals, on minds.com, on Parler, on Gab, or anywhere else that you might be seeing me or hearing me today. The subject again for today is wages and prices, and let me go ahead and go through my notes to give you an idea sort of what we're saying today, what we're talking about. If you don't control prices, increases in wages more or less cannot have the anticipated effect. If you increase wages in a situation where you don't control prices, you can count on price increases which will always affect less affluent folks more than those who are doing well financially. In fact, you can almost index price increases, to the wage increase of lower income individuals. Why is that true? An almost universal reality of market economics, if not universal, it may be universal, is that you can't charge more than lower paid individuals can pay unless you want to exclude them from your market, or at least reduce their consumption of whatever it is that you're selling. But if folks making and selling various products are expected to maintain their level of comfort, it's necessary for those paying their wages to keep them at a reasonable level of wage. That will drive up the cost of goods and services, because you have to pay for those wage increases if wages for others increase. Again, this means that if you increase the minimum wage, which is really non-existent, since the actual minimum wage is zero, as Thomas Sowell has correctly stated, all you're actually accomplishing is increasing prices, what would be termed inflation. This also means that more well-paid folks will have to make yet more money. So if a person was making, say, $80,000 a year, he or she might get a pay increase, bringing him or her up to $100,000 a year annually instead. And this will typically occur up and down the wage front. What this means is that what used to be worth $80,000 is likely to become worth basically $100,000. That is to say, you're going to get more or less for more money, less product for more money. That's what's going to happen there. In other words, wages and prices are pretty much inexorably linked. If you attempt to unlink, delink, whatever word you want to use there, the two, you take away the incentive to produce. Put simply, folks do what they do because it's beneficial for them to do it. And it may be for them, and it may be for family members, it may be for any number of community, they may see it in any number of ways, but if it's not beneficial, the point is they're not going to do it. If you make it so prices are controlled, you also essentially control what people can be paid, since prices cause wages to rise and fall, and vice versa. When you meddle with prices, you meddle with wages. That's the point. If you try to change that, again, many folks will either stop or slow down their production as a result. Don't believe that? Read what Dr. Sowell has to say about what happened in the former Soviet Union in his basic economics text. How people plowing fields plowed the edges deeper than the center of the field, making the yield much lower toward the middle because they were incentivized to do so. They were told you need to plow fast. Well, they had to make it look like they were plowing on the outside of the field. It didn't need to look so much so on the inside so long because people weren't typically going to go in to find out. Like it or not, the purchasing power of a given wage is what motivates folks to take on the work associated with higher paying jobs. That tend to be more difficult for a variety of reasons than lower paying ones. Now, I'm not talking about physical labor. I'm talking about things like having to really think out what you're doing, plan stuff, know things that other people don't know, and so forth. That's when I say more difficult, I mean in those senses. As a final thought, when governments try to control both wages and prices, we have a name for that: a command economy, or socialism, or at least fascism. How has that worked out to this point? Not so well. The reality is this: when people try to control even minimum wage, what you're going to come to understand is they aren't doing what they think they're doing unless they're also controlling prices. And if they're controlling prices as well, hey, guess what? You now have a command economy. You now have socialism, or at the very least, fascism. Okay, going on. That's what you have. So the point is, unless you think you want to really implement socialism, there's no way that you're going to control prices or wages unless you control prices as well, which will push you into the realm of socialism, or, like I say, at least fascism. The point of all of this is simple. When government meddles in wages, in pay for people, and says this is the minimum that can be paid for any given individual, what they're actually doing is forcing prices up unless they are doing something to force them down. And if they're doing something to force prices down, they're doing two things. One, they're making it so that people will stop doing those things that they consider are not worth their time. And two, they're making room for a black market in whatever economy they do that in. And again, you can see this in any socialist / communist / fascistic entity that you can look at anywhere. You'll see that happens. People go, yeah, I don't think I'll do that. And then if they're forced to do it, what ends up happening is people live these far lower, what's the word I want, the term that everybody likes to use. Their standard of living is far lower because they're being forced to do things that by that point really are not meaningful to them. And by the way, a lot of the time the product they produce is garbage as well. Why? Because they're trying to produce the most product that they can as cheaply as they're able to do so, and they're going to do whatever they can to make that happen. Like I say, that person plowing the field who plows the edges of the field with deeper furrows and then plows the middle of the field, raising the plowshares as they move in towards that middle, right? Of course, that's going to be a problem because the crops that are in the middle are going to be blighted. And when you look at those crops from the air, you will see that being the case. Or you look at a car like the Yugo. Well, the problem is they cannot produce that car as cheaply as they have to produce it if they want to be able to sell it to people. I had a friend who was working in, I think, he was working in research here in the United States. He was an oncologist in his home country, Ukraine. And my friend said, the idea of having a car or owning your own home, that was a dream, an unrealizable dream, unattainable dream in my country. And to make that worse, and you'd have to ask him about when this was, but to make that worse, he said, then on top of that, I want to help these people who have cancer lots of times, and I can't do anything for them because I have to tell them, you can't afford the treatment that I would have to give you in order to actually make you well. And so he was quite frustrated and very upset by his lot. And so when he came to the United States, that gave him the opportunity both to increase his standard of life and to increase the quality of what he was doing so that hopefully others would benefit from it, which is something that he could not count on from what he was doing in his home country. So if you think that wages and prices are not inexorably linked, and if you think that you can control one without controlling the other, let me help you, you're mistaken. Likewise, if you think that controlling both is not socialism or communism or fascism, you are also mistaken. Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This is the Daily Summation for Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, Kurt, And today is Friday the 11th of February of 2022. Means tomorrow will be Saturday the 12th of February of 2022. So today is the beginning of that Sabbath for those who observe it at sundown. And tomorrow at sundown will be the end. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on minds.com, on locals.com, kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Gab, on Parler, on all of the various places that you might see me. Thank you for coming along today. Remember that you can give me a Rumble on Rumble. You can give me a plus or minus also on that platform to show that you like or dislike my content. And obviously you can give me similar likes or dislikes on any platform where that's available. Remember also that you can comment on my content if you choose to do that, and I will do my best to look at your comments and react and respond according to what I think is appropriate, and that might include actually replying to your content or deleting it if you're trying to do things like advertise on my videos, which I'm not going to allow in the way that most people are trying to do it. Subject for today has been wages and prices, and tomorrow we're going to talk about the idea of Paul, that is Saul of Tarsus, in case you're wondering, and Judaism. I wanted to kind of discuss that idea because I see some people who I think are using what Paul did as excuses for what they're doing in an attempt, whether they think so or not, largely to be, quote, holier than thou. Hope things are going well for you. Hope you're doing well today and that the year is going well for you, that this month, that this year and so forth are moving right along as you would have them do. It's starting to warm up in my neck of the woods a little bit, though it's going to cool down, I guess, over the weekend. And hopefully we will see you again on Saturday's edition, I guess it is, of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Friday, the 11th of February of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.